There's a point at the end of every serious training camp where everything changes, and on that final day, especially with someone like Mike Tyson, it stops feeling like preparation and starts feeling like inevitability, because there's nothing left to build, nothing left to test, only what's already there, ready or not. For most fighters, that shift is intense. For Tyson, it feels almost eerily calm, but not in a relaxed way. In a way that suggests everything has already been decided internally, like the work is done and now it's just a matter of stepping into the moment and letting it unfold, and that kind of calm carries its own weight, because underneath it, there's a lifetime of experience, of knowing exactly what fight night demands. The gym itself feels different on a day like that. Movements are sharper but more controlled, conversations shorter, energy more focused. There's no chaos, no experimentation. Just refinement and trust, where every action is about reinforcing what's already been built, locking it in mentally as much as physically, because at this stage, doubt is more dangerous than fatigue. And when you place that atmosphere around a figure like Tyson, preparing for something as widely watched as a fight with Jake Paul, it takes on another layer entirely, because this isn't just the end of a camp. It's the collision point between experience and expectation, between a legacy forged over decades and a moment being watched by a completely new generation. What makes it even more compelling is that nothing dramatic needs to happen on that final day for it to feel significant. In fact, it's the opposite, the quiet, the control, the absence of urgency that reveals the most, because it shows a fighter who isn't chasing readiness anymore, but accepting it, trusting it, and mentally stepping into what comes next. What hits you first in that environment isn't what's happening, it's what's no longer happening, because all the extra movement, the unnecessary energy, the wasted actions, they're gone, stripped away until everything that remains feels intentional, controlled, and almost surgical, like every motion has to justify its existence. And with Tyson, that shift becomes even more pronounced, because his final sessions don't carry that chaotic, push to the limit energy people often expect. Instead, they feel measured, almost quiet in comparison, but underneath that calm is a level of focus that's far more intense than raw exertion, because now it's not about doing more, it's about doing exactly what's needed, nothing more, nothing less. Every punch, every step, every adjustment looks like it's being filtered through experience, like he's not just moving. He's confirming, reinforcing patterns that have already been built, making sure timing is locked in, balance is where it needs to be, reactions are clean, and that nothing feels forced or uncertain, because at this stage, even small inefficiencies stand out. That's the real shift away from chasing intensity for its own sake, and toward precision with purpose, because pushing harder doesn't necessarily make you better at this point. But being sharper, clearer, and more aligned absolutely does, and that's something only experience teaches, knowing when to stop building and start trusting. There's also a mental clarity that comes with it, because when everything is deliberate like this, it removes noise, removes doubt, and replaces it with a kind of quiet confidence, where the fighter isn't guessing anymore, they're executing what they already understand, and that clarity can be just as important as any physical preparation. So what might look, on the surface, like a reduction in intensity is actually the opposite, it's a refinement of intensity, condensed into focus, precision, and control, and in Tyson's case. There's also a subtle but powerful shift in how time itself feels during this final phase, and it's not something you notice immediately, it's something you feel in the pace of everything, because the urgency that once drove every session starts to fade, replaced by a more controlled, almost deliberate rhythm where nothing is rushed and nothing is forced. Earlier in camp, time feels like it's always slipping away, there's pressure to improve, to fix, to build. But here, that pressure transforms into something quieter, more focused, where each moment is given exactly the space it needs, no more, no less, and that shift changes the entire mental landscape of a fighter. For someone like Tyson, this isn't about slowing down. It's about locking in, moving from a mindset of constant effort into one of controlled readiness, where the goal is no longer to gain something new, but to stabilize everything that's already been built, to make sure it holds together without strain or doubt. And that change in rhythm does something important psychologically, because it removes the feeling of chasing improvement and replaces it with a sense of balance and trust, where the fighter isn't trying to prove anything in the gym anymore, they're aligning themselves with what they already know they can do. That's a completely different kind of focus, one that feels calmer on the surface but is actually more refined, more intentional, because now every action is about maintaining clarity, preserving sharpness, and avoiding anything that could disrupt that mental equilibrium before the fight. So while the outside might see a slower pace, internally it's the opposite. It's a tightening of awareness, where time isn't something to race against anymore, but something to move through with precision, as the fighter shifts fully from preparation into readiness, from effort into execution. Within this phase, experience stops being an advantage and starts becoming the foundation everything else rests on, because a fighter like Tyson isn't guessing his way through the final day, he's operating from a place of deep familiarity with the process, knowing exactly what needs attention and, just as importantly, what doesn't. That distinction is critical, because less experienced fighters often feel the urge to do more at the end, to squeeze in extra work, to chase last-minute improvements. But Tyson doesn't move like that. He understands that at this stage, unnecessary changes can do more harm than good, so instead of adding, he refines and protects what's already been built. It shows in the way he approaches everything. There's no hesitation, no overthinking, just a clear sense of what needs to be reinforced and what should be left untouched, and that clarity removes a huge amount of mental noise, because decisions aren't being debated internally, they're already made. And that's where confidence comes from at this level, not from hype or emotion, but from recognition, from having been through it before, from knowing how preparation translates into performance, and trusting that the work has been done the right way. It also creates a kind of discipline that's easy to overlook, because choosing not to adjust something, choosing not to interfere with what's working, requires just as much awareness as making changes, and that restraint is something experience teaches over time. So when Tyson steps into that final stage of preparation, he's not navigating uncertainty. He's executing a process he understands completely, relying on a blueprint shaped by years at the highest level, and that's what allows him to move through those final moments with a sense of control that's hard to replicate without that kind of background. At the same time, there's an emotional undercurrent to this moment that never fully shows itself on the surface, but it's always there, because the final day isn't just another session, it's a point of no return, where everything that's been built now has to stand on its own, without adjustment, without correction. And that creates a very specific mix of emotions, not chaotic or overwhelming, but contained and focused. A blend of anticipation, quiet intensity, and reflection, where a fighter is aware of what's coming, aware of what's been done, and aware that the next step won't allow for any more preparation, only execution. For someone like Tyson, that emotion doesn't come out in obvious ways. It's controlled, almost internalized, but it shows up in the way he moves, the way he carries himself, the way everything feels just a little more deliberate, because underneath the composure, there's a clear understanding. This is the moment where preparation ends and reality begins. There's also a reflective side to it, whether it's acknowledged or not, because reaching this point means looking back at the work, the adjustments, the discipline it took to get here. And then letting all of that go, trusting that it's enough, and that kind of trust isn't easy, even for experienced fighters. But that's exactly what gives the final day its unique character, because it exists in that narrow space between control and uncertainty, where everything feels aligned, yet nothing has been proven yet, and that tension, quiet but undeniable, is what makes it so significant. Because once this moment passes, there's no more building, no more refining, no more second chances to adjust, only the fight itself, where everything that's been done will either hold together or be tested in ways that can't be predicted, and that reality is what gives this final day its weight, not just as part of the process, but as the threshold between preparation and truth. As the final day keeps unfolding, the gym almost starts to feel like an extension of Tyson's mindset itself, because the usual noise, the constant corrections, the urgency, the background chatter fades into something much quieter, much more intentional, like everyone in the room understands, without needing to say it, that the real work has already been completed. There's a different kind of communication happening now. Instructions are shorter, sharper, almost minimal, because nothing needs to be over-explained at this stage. Every word carries purpose, every response is immediate, and that efficiency creates a rhythm that feels tight and controlled, with no wasted energy anywhere in the process. Even the smallest details start to stand out: the timing of the warm-up, the pacing between drills, the way combinations are executed and then reset. Everything feels slightly more precise, as if each action is being used to mentally reinforce what's already in place, rather than build something new. And that's where the intensity comes from, because it's not loud or chaotic, it's contained, almost compressed into focus and awareness, where everyone is locked into the same understanding. This is no longer about getting better, it's about being ready. What makes it even more striking is how that shared mindset spreads across the environment, influencing not just Tyson, but everyone around him. creating a space where distractions don't really exist, where the outside world feels distant, and where the only thing that matters is alignment, mentally, physically, and emotionally. By the time you fully take it in, it becomes clear that this isn't just a gym on the final day of camp. It's a controlled atmosphere built around a single purpose, where every detail, no matter how small, is contributing to that final transition from preparation into performance, and where the silence itself feels like part of the process. There's also a clear shift in how Tyson connects with his team at this stage, and it's not dramatic, it's refined, almost stripped down to its essentials, because communication no longer needs to be detailed or repetitive. It becomes short, direct, and purposeful, built on the kind of trust that only develops over time, where everyone already understands the language of the camp. You can see it in the way instructions are given. Brief cues instead of long explanations, small adjustments instead of full breakdowns, and more importantly, in how quickly those instructions are absorbed and executed. There's no hesitation, no need to clarify, just instant alignment, and that kind of efficiency only exists when the groundwork has already been laid. This is where trust really shows its value, because it removes friction from the process. Tyson doesn't need to question what he's being told, and his team doesn't need to over-explain what they're seeing. It's a shared understanding, where everyone is operating from the same page, focused on the same outcome. And that matters even more on a final day like this, because the goal isn't to introduce anything new. It's to reinforce what's already there, to make sure everything feels natural, automatic, and fully integrated, and long, complicated communication would only disrupt that flow. So instead, what you get is a kind of streamlined interaction, where every word has purpose, every adjustment is precise, and nothing feels excessive, and that efficiency helps maintain the mental clarity needed at this stage, keeping everything centered and controlled. In the end, it's another reflection of experience. Not just Tyson's, but the team's as well, because reaching this level of communication means the process has already been tested, refined, and understood, allowing the final moments of camp to move with a quiet confidence that doesn't need to be explained, only executed. From a physical standpoint, this is where the training almost flips its identity, because it's no longer about testing limits or squeezing out extra endurance, it's about protecting sharpness, making sure everything feels fast, clean, and completely under control without draining what's left in the tank. The sessions become shorter, but not easier, just more precise. Every movement is there to activate, not exhaust, to keep reactions sharp, timing crisp, and coordination locked in, without introducing fatigue that could dull those same qualities. It's a very deliberate balance, because pushing too hard at this stage doesn't add anything, it risks taking something away. With Tyson, that balance shows up in how fluid everything looks. The power is still there, the speed is still there, but it's all delivered with a kind of effortless control, like he's operating well within himself, making sure nothing feels forced, nothing feels rushed, and nothing disrupts the rhythm he'll need on fight night. There's also a strong emphasis on responsiveness, how quickly he reacts, how naturally he transitions, how smoothly he resets. Because those are the elements that need to feel automatic, and keeping them sharp without overloading the body is what defines this phase. And that's the key, staying fully engaged without crossing into fatigue. It's a narrow line, but an important one, because peak condition isn't just about being strong or fast, it's about being fresh enough to use those attributes when it matters most, without any heaviness or delay. So what might look like a lighter workload is actually a targeted refinement of performance, where the goal is to enter the fight not just in shape, but in the right state, physically sharp, mentally clear, and carrying just enough energy to let everything unfold at its highest level when the moment arrives. At the same time, there's a quiet but unmistakable awareness running through the entire session. This is it, the last chance to catch anything that doesn't feel right, no matter how small, no matter how subtle. But that awareness doesn't show up as panic or overexertion. It shows up as heightened attention, where every detail is examined with a sharper eye, every movement carries a little more intention, and nothing is allowed to pass unchecked. It's not about doing more. It's about seeing more clearly. With Tyson, that final layer of focus feels almost instinctive. Small adjustments are made without hesitation, minor corrections are handled immediately, and anything that feels even slightly off is addressed on the spot, not with urgency and effort, but with urgency and precision, because at this stage, even the smallest inconsistency stands out. It's like a final calibration. The stance, the timing, the reactions, the rhythm. Everything is given one last pass, not to change it, but to confirm it, to make sure it's exactly where it needs to be before stepping away from the gym environment entirely. And that's where the tension lies, not in physical intensity, but in the understanding that once this moment passes, there are no more adjustments, no more fine-tuning, no more controlled corrections. Whatever is there now, is what goes into the fight. That's why the attention to detail becomes so sharp, because this isn't about improvement anymore, it's about eliminating doubt, locking in certainty, and walking away from that final session knowing that nothing important was left unchecked. The mental side of this stage is where everything quietly comes together or falls apart, because even though the physical work is essentially done, the mind is still very active, shaping, reinforcing, and sometimes questioning everything that's been built. For a fighter like Tyson, this isn't about hype or emotion, it's about alignment. Repetition now serves a different purpose. It's not just physical, it's psychological, reinforcing patterns until they feel automatic, until there's no hesitation left. Visualization plays into that as well, running through scenarios, reactions, moments of pressure so that when they happen for real, they don't feel unfamiliar. And that's where confidence at this level really comes from. Not from talk, not from external validation, but from clarity, knowing what to do, when to do it, and trusting that it will be there under pressure. That kind of confidence is built quietly, through consistency, and it's what allows a fighter to stay composed when things get unpredictable. At the same time, this is also where experience matters most. Tyson has been through extremes, dominance, adversity, chaos, and that history shapes how he approaches this moment. He knows how quickly things can shift, how important it is to stay grounded, and that awareness adds a layer of control to his mindset, keeping it focused rather than reactive. There's also a deliberate effort to block out noise, to narrow everything down to what actually matters, because distractions at this stage can disrupt that mental balance, and once that balance is off, it can affect everything else. So the focus becomes internal on breathing, timing, awareness, and maintaining that steady state of readiness. In the end, this phase isn't about building belief. It's about confirming it, locking it in so that when the moment arrives, there's no searching, no second guessing, just execution, driven by a mindset that's been fully aligned with the task ahead. There's also a noticeable pull toward routine on the final day, and it's not accidental, it's deliberate and strategic, because when everything else is about to become unpredictable, routine becomes a way to anchor yourself in something stable. Certain actions repeat almost exactly the same warm-up flow, the same sequences, the same rhythm to the session, and while it might look simple from the outside, it's doing something important internally. It's reinforcing familiarity, making everything feel known, controlled, and dependable right before stepping into an environment where none of those things are guaranteed. For Tyson, this isn't about going through the motions, it's about locking into a pattern that removes uncertainty, where each repeated action sends a signal to the mind: this is normal, this is prepared, this is ready. And that familiarity can be powerful, because it creates a sense of calm without reducing focus. Experienced fighters rely on this because they understand something crucial: when the fight starts, variables multiply quickly, and the only thing you can truly control is how grounded you are in your own process, and routine helps build that foundation. It also reduces the chance of overthinking, because instead of questioning what to do or how to feel, the fighter is simply moving through a structure they've already internalized, allowing instinct to take over without interference. So while it may look repetitive, that repetition is actually a form of preparation in itself, a way of creating stability before chaos, ensuring that when everything becomes unpredictable, the fighter still has something solid to rely on: their habits, their rhythm, and a mindset that's been carefully reinforced through routine. As the session moves forward, what stands out is that the energy never spikes or crashes, it stays remarkably even, almost controlled to the point where nothing feels accidental. And that consistency isn't a lack of intensity, it's a refined form of it, where everything is calibrated to serve a very specific purpose. There are no emotional surges, no frantic moments, no drop-offs in focus. Instead, the gym operates at a steady rhythm, where every drill, every exchange, every pause fits into a flow that keeps the fighter fully engaged without draining them, and that balance is exactly what this stage demands. For Tyson, this kind of controlled energy is key, because it allows him to stay mentally locked in without tipping into overexertion or distraction. It's the difference between being active and being efficient, where nothing is wasted and nothing disrupts the overall state of readiness. That steadiness also creates a kind of mental stability, because when the environment remains consistent, it becomes easier to maintain clarity, to stay focused on execution rather than reacting to fluctuations in pace or emotion. It keeps everything grounded, everything aligned. And that's what makes these final moments effective. Not dramatic effort, but sustained precision, where the fighter can move through each phase of the session with full awareness, reinforcing what matters without introducing anything unnecessary. By the time it's over, that consistency leaves its mark not as exhaustion, but as controlled readiness, where the body is sharp, the mind is clear, and nothing feels out of place, setting the stage for a transition that's no longer about preparation, but about performance.